Good afternoon on what is a bright, warm and sunny day. It is Sunday the 10th of April and I'm a nice hot cup of tea. And a parcel to open. So, and inside I have a copy of the Warlock Returns Issue 1, which is published by Publishers for Advanced Fighting Fantasy. That, and it's published by Arion Games, who basically support the. You can buy plenty. Okay, Fighting Fantasy is the solo adventure books originally created by Steve Jackson and Livingstone back in the early 80s, and they've been popular ever since. Very popular during the 80s, and they've come back several times, and you can still buy them, and they've also got many fans. Arion Games supports Advanced Fighting Fantasy with as a role-playing system rather than a series of role-playing solo adventure books. And Warlock Returns, when it says Warlock Returns, it refers to a magazine that was out during the 80s called Warlock, which contained more adventures for fighting fantasy. And there were about, I suppose, something like about 30 issues, and it had a competitor called Proteus, and essentially you buy that every month, and sort of like you would have more solo adventures you could play, and that would sit alongside something like, you know, your copies of White Dwarf and Imagine and Dragon magazine and so on. So, Warlock Returns issue number 1. In this issue, director advice on adversary power levels, plot hooks, Chinese-inspired weapons and chaos dragons. Garius begins his adventuring, a Logan-inspired adventure in Arion, Tora a stellar adventures setting, and on the back we have this issue brings new material for fans of advanced fighting fantasy role-playing game and the fighting fantasy game books. Published 4 times a year, this issue contains denizens of the pit, new monsters from Titan, jungle, preparation for the wilder parts of Titan, sizing up monsters, adversary power levels, welcome to Arion, adventure for advanced fighting fantasy, director advice articles suggesting reading material and plot hooks, Chinese-inspired weapons for use in advanced fighting fantasy, the Legend of Garius comic strip, Tora a stellar adventure setting, letters for Arion, and advanced fighting fantasy and Fantasy Grounds Unity, plus a new character sheet from Dice and Logos and a 1-page dungeon. So, quite a lot packed into a fairly slim little magazine. So, we open up, we've got to add that for all the advanced fighting fantasy content from Arion Games, and it is, and then we've got the content sheet page, and we go on to Chaos Dragons, Yellow Dragons, Orange Dragons, big, bold, easy to read layout, nothing too exciting there, nothing too, I would say, it's fairly pedestrian in its layout. So, more dragons before we get on to Jungle Mania. And then basically got basic travel through the jungle, things you might use or find in the jungle, like darts, mosquito nets and machetes. And then sizing up monsters, basically setting essentially the right level of monsters against the skills of your player characters. For the bookworms, essentially a selection of books which the characters might be able to find in a game of advanced fighting fantasy. That would, of course, would be useful outside of the in other role-playing systems if you want to take them there. Books are always useful sources of information, as it says. We have Chinese-inspired for the Isles of the Dawn. So this is sort of like the usual kind of it's a weapons collection we've kind of seen before in other articles, but here presented for fighting fantasy. That's no bad thing. And it adds, you grab one of these and they add a degree of essentially exoticism or difference for your player characters or indeed your enemies. So lots of interesting weapons there, all illustrated. Dice and Logos, character sheet, and the one-shot dungeon there. It's basically strange degree of symbology there, at almost alchemical in its layout. Notes and letters from Arion. So just sort of like I don't know what this is. It's sort of like these are small notes that characters could stumble across whilst in Arion or in the surrounding area. So it's the equivalent of those books earlier, but just notes that people have left or dropped. Like Policia, go to the marketplace and get some cheese from Harton. He knows the ones I like, McGrack. Or stay away from her, Nysel. I don't care if you're a lord. If you approach her again, you will regret it. This is your first and only warning. So, you know, adventure hooks almost. And we have a Welcome to Arion, which is an introduction adventure to the city of Arion. It's a fairly lengthy adventure. That's probably one of the longer articles in the issue, all the way down to a happy ending. A pretty decent artwork accompanying it as well, just to show you that. And then Legend of Garius, Hero of Khan. There's a 4-page comic strip starting in the issues there, because there are multiple issues of this available. The comic is 4 pages long. And then we have Stellar Adventures, Tora, a Stellar Adventures setting, which is a planetary setting for your Stellar Adventures game. Stellar Adventures is the science fiction version of Advanced Fighting Fantasy. So basically background and then special rules. Basically 4 pages or so of content material that enough to you bring the world into your Stellar Adventures game. And then that's for Arion, essentially, which is a editorial or essentially update from Graham Botley, who publishes the issue, and of also the Advanced Fighting Fantasy content. And then Agony Aunt Garius, so the character from the earlier cartoon, gets his own Agony Aunt column, or should that be Agony Uncle column? Before we have some notes for Advanced Fighting Fantasy and Fantasy Grounds Unity for running the game online, which has of course become all the more important in the past couple of years or so with the effects of COVID-19 and the lockdown. So that's the slim first issue for the Warlock Returns. Decent little fanzine, stroke magazine, sort of cross between the two, with a fairly heavy input. I'm not saying there's a negative input, but a fairly strong input from the publisher. So if you're a fan of the Advanced Fighting Fantasy, this is probably very much something you want to have a look at. And again, you can probably mine it for ideas as you would any other magazine. In the meantime, I hope you have enjoyed this unboxing in the Nook. If you have, please do click on the like button down below. And of course, if you've got any comments or feedback, I appreciate you posting those. In the meantime, if you'd like to be alerted to yet more unboxings in the Nook, where you will see me out here with a parcel and a book or game, or in this case a magazine, which I will talk about to the best extent of my knowledge for roughly 10 minutes or so, all of course accompanied by a nice hot cup of tea. Then please do hit the subscribe button. Thanks again for watching. I'll be back again soon with another unboxing in the Nook. Bye for now.